Okay, so this is part 2 of the video. So anyways, let me actually address some things I need to address under here and then go back. There's a long story behind this. Long story short, AutoZone technically did this. When they installed my battery, the terminals were too loose. Eventually, I started seeing smoke, so I went back and had them force them in my, you made this mess, you go fix it, and then tie in the terminals, but this was already done. I'm eventually going to replace the whole terminal. But anyways, like I was saying, so since I'll say it in here. Okay, so anyways, back with the story. So the 6R80 is it's a very good transmission. It's just that I feel that Ford made a big mistake putting that lead frame in, which is what Lee told at Fiasco. But I feel like the 10R80 is much worse. The 10-speed had its long history of recalls and problems and failures and lawsuits and all this stuff. So that being said, I personally think whether you should buy one or not, that depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for, decent acceleration, don't want turbos, just get the 5-liter V8. If you don't mind the fact that it's a naturally aspirated engine, but you will want a little bit more oomph and a little bit more ability to tow, just get the 5.0 V8. I wanted the 5.0 originally, but we settled for this. Which my parents got stuck in the gas mileage theory and all this crap, so that's why we're kind of stuck with this. I originally wanted a 5.0, but I actually like the 5.0 a lot, and because I rented U-Hauls, that didn't help either. The 5.3 actually had more guts than this thing did. I will say, compared to the 5.3, this is a turd. But if you don't mind, if you can sacrifice two cylinders, have decent reliability, really a fairly trouble-free engine, this is the one to get. Now, people question and they'll say, oh, but the internal water pump and all this crap. Let me tell you, yes, the 3.7 did have an internal water pump. But what you have to understand, this is a rear-wheel drive based vehicle. In the trucks and any rear-wheel drive, whether it's the Mustang, the Transit, they were rear-wheel drive. Any rear-wheel drive application had the external water pump design. And when I open the hood, I'll show you again. It's a very easy job to do on these. The internal water pump came down to the Explorer Police Interceptors and the Edges and the Taurus Police Interceptor. And any front-wheel drive based design that used the 3.7. You also have to remember, there was this van, I think it was called MBB1, whatever the hell it was called. Some special, I think the Accessorites used them in New York. They originally had the 4.6, but then they ended up switching over to the 3.7. This was originally kind of a collaboration between Ford and Mazda. So this is their engine, but there's not their engine, basically. I think it was the front wheel drive design that was more Mazda based. So anyways, what I want to say is around, what was it? Around 100, like a little bit shortly after my transmission fluid change, 132,000 miles, I replaced. Because I really noticed over time the gas mileage was getting worse and worse and worse, even driving conservatively. So what I ended up doing was, one day the check engine light came on. The evap purge valve went bad, so I replaced it. Ever since, and I've used premium gas from time to time, and I really noticed this very violent roll. And for some reason, it still has the roll, but it isn't as bad as before. But this thing seems to like premium gas better. It seems to like 93 better because it doesn't really roll on 93. But before it was even before the purge valve, when the purge valve went out, before I replaced it, holy crap, was even intensified with that purge valve issue. It would literally roll to the point where you feel like it's an earthquake complete. I know V6s aren't inherently balanced, but holy shit, was it rolling. But aside from those things, it's a very relatively trouble-free engine. If you don't care about, if you don't really prioritize a little bit better gas miles, because the 5.0 does tend to get better than these in the real world, believe it or not. And because the 5.0 is a small displacement V8, this is actually pretty large for V6. Anything past maybe 3 liters, maybe like 3.5, 3.7, when you start getting up there, especially 4 liter, it's a very big block V6. It's a very large displacement for V6. So that's another reason I don't get good gas mileage, especially 373 rear, the tires, all that stuff comes into play. Maybe if I had 355 rear, it would help out a bit. And maybe the tunnel cover. I will say, I did notice I kind of had to drive like around 55 miles an hour in a 65 to do it. But I did observe for a bit, 19 miles a gallon combined. Like a little bit over 19, like a hair over. Maybe like almost 19 and a half. I got like 513 at the very least on the tank. So I would just call it 19. Somewhere in that range. Between 19 and 19 and a half. And that was on 93, mind you. And technically, from what I heard, because this engine isn't tuned for 93, it's tuned for 87. I heard, oh, you'll get worse gas mileage on 93. Not necessarily is that always the case. But I will say it does clean the injectors. I will tell you that. Which I think they definitely need to be cleaned. But let's start this up. I'll let you listen to the engine. I don't know if you can hear it. Okay, let's open the hood. I want to show you what I get. Also, I do want to show you real quick what the computer says I'm averaging. It says I average around 18. It's dropped a little bit, but it was 18. Let's open the hood. Of course, it says brake because I'm parked on the hill, so I had to. I also I bought it, and this came with the auxiliary cooler, by the way, because it comes with the tow package. So let's show you. There he is. And there's the water pump, by the way, right there. Down there, very easy job to change. That's where the water pump is. Right out here, you can see it. See, right behind there, that's the water pump, and that's the pulleys and stuff. Very easy job to change. The injectors could be a little noisy, but it would be worse if it had direct injection. But yeah, that's my truck. If you have any other questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Kind of shakes a little, but that's all right. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you want to ask me any questions in the comments, feel free. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Also, I installed this radio not too long ago. Like maybe a few years ago back, I also installed that. That's another modification I did. About 2 years ago, around 120, I installed this radio. Not even, it was like around 115-ish. That's when I installed this radio. It's been there since like December or so of 2023. And I also got my windows tinted around September 2023. This wasn't always like this. 15% and 5% for the rear. For those windows in the back, it's 5%. These are 15%. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Leave them any questions. If you have any questions, feel free. Out.